God bless all of you, and God bless America. I am so honored to be here in this beautiful church in Philadelphia. I won't tell you a lot about me. You know I'm a former spy. You know I created the Marine Corps Intelligence Command. You know I ran a company, Open Source Solutions, for many years. I trained over 7,500 people in open source intelligence. And then, by the hand of God, I lost my company. I was having a routine security interview one day, and they said, well, you haven't listed many foreign contacts on your SF-86, which is our security form. I said, no, I'm not sleeping with any of them. And they said, okay, so tell us about all of your foreign contacts. And so I told them about all 7,500, each of whom had a one-page dossier in my office. Imagine 3 little chimpanzees jumping up and down in a small room. That was the reaction of these idiot security officers. They stripped me of my clearances, which cost me my contracts. I was grossing $1.7 million a year as a single employee, and blew up my business. And God bless them for doing so. Even though a judge gave my clearances back within a few months, what that did was put me on a path to the Nobel Peace Prize, to the nomination for the Nobel Peace Prize. I don't deserve the prize. I've said that in frequent videos. I would like to help Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, Xi Jinping, and Modi in India earn the Nobel Peace Prize by lifting the world up with open source everything engineering, which can accomplish all 17 of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals without the United Nations, which is a massive corrupt bureaucracy, nepotistic corrupt bureaucracy. And we can do it for 10% of the cost of Western engineering. And I'll just give you one quick example to make the point that this is really huge. A John Deere tractor costs $200,000, and all of the software in that tractor is secret. It can't be repaired in the field by the farmer. An open source tractor that Marcin Jakubowski has built, and he genuinely deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. He's built 55 open source machines for the global civilization, global village toolkit. His open source tractor costs $20,000 and can be repaired by the farmer in the field with plug and play parts. So $200,000, secret, proprietary, expensive, $20,000. That's the difference. We can lift the entire world up in less than a decade at 10% of the cost of what the Western engineering model does, because the Western engineering model is captured by financial and legal straitjackets that basically make it impossible for people to lift themselves up. So what I'm going to do tonight is 3 things I've never done before in the same presentation. First, I'm going to talk about the deep state and what is the deep state and how can we take down the deep state. And this is addressed to Donald Trump because I've published a Kindle Trump Revolution series that has been popular. And also every title in my Kindle series is free online if you look for the title. So I'm not pimping the 99-cent books. So I'm going to talk about the deep state, how to take it down. Then I'm going to go over the 8 big ideas that I've been trying to communicate to Donald Trump since December of 2015. And it's a sign of how corrupt the people around him are, including Reince Priebus, who I've described as a traitor. Because Reince Priebus, apart from being Paul Ryan's boyfriend, is someone who does not want to unrig the system. He likes the rigged system. He is the rigged system. All right? And then after I finish these 8 ideas very quickly, I'm going to talk about the 12 points in the Election Reform Act. I had to run for president in 2012, one of 3 people accepted by the Reform Party as a candidate. I pulled out after 6 weeks. Andre Barnett had done a better job than I, and he was clearly the favorite candidate, but I learned a lot. And one of the things I learned was that we have 8 accredited political parties in the United States of America. Constitution, Green, Libertarian, Natural Law, Reform, and Socialist are the other 6. And of those, the Green and Libertarian parties are the most important, and then the Constitution Party. We also have small parties that cannot gain traction, like the Justice Party with Rocky Anderson out in the West, and Working Families with Bill de Blasio in New York. We have a rigged system. It's rigged 12 different ways. And I've spent the last several years aggregating ideas from everybody who's ever thought about election reform And so I'll end by talking about that. Please hear me clearly. If we were to have a national conversation in June, and if we were to occupy the front lawns and home offices of every member of Congress in July, force them to sign the integrity pledge, we could get the Election Reform Act passed in September in time to change 2018 and put a swing vote into Congress. And that would then lead to evidence-based decision-making in the U.S. government. Many people don't know that it was Newt Gingrich who destroyed Congress. This is told in a book, The Power and the Ambition. By the way, I'm the top Amazon reviewer for nonfiction. I read in 98 categories. And all of my reviews are summary reviews, so they're like Cliff Notes for smart people. Newt Gingrich turned all members of Congress into foot soldiers for the party. They no longer represent their constituents. And that's the lack of integrity that we have to correct with this Election Reform Act. So let me start with an overview of the deep state. Most people make the mistake of thinking that the deep state, which Peter Dale Scott wrote the original book on it, but it's my interviews on alt-right that have made deep state a term of reference that now even the fake news media has to respect. The people in the two-party tyrannies and in the government bureaucracies who are part of the deep state are the best of the servant class. They're not actually the deciders. The deciders are the Rothschilds and the Jesuits, and they have actually been intermarrying for centuries. We have what we call secular Jesuits, and the Rothschilds and the Jesuits are one. They're above the white pope. The black Jesuit pope is above the white pope, who's a Franciscan. And the Rothschilds are above the Queen of England, and they're above the City of London and Wall Street. And we have legalized massive crimes by these banks, to include manipulating foreign exchange and interest rates. Some of you may remember the Libor scandal in London. These people were caught actually manipulating interest rates. They laugh at Trump. They consider him a chump because he's making small money with construction. When Goldman Sachs wants to make a lot of money, they start a war. And that drives up the price of oil and does other things, okay? So I cannot overstate the degree of evil that exists in the banking system as it responds to the Rothschilds and the Black Pope, the Jesuits. Then the banks essentially fund two-party tyrannies in each country. And one of the things that's fascinating about this # unrigged that Cynthia and I have gotten going is that it's now going international. Half of my donations are from foreign countries, particularly Canada, Australia, and the United Kingdom. They all see, the United Kingdom, the Independence Party, sees that there is a two-party tyranny that they have to defeat in order to restore integrity. So the deep state comes from the Rothschilds and the Black Pope down to the City of London and Wall Street, and then down to the two-party tyranny, one bird, two wings, same crap, okay? And then it goes down to the secret intelligence agencies that are the blackmailers and the enforcers. People don't realize that CIA, the FBI, by the way, the FBI was founded by a pedophile. J. Edgar Hoover used to take small children as gifts from the mafia. Okay, pedophilia is very big in all this. And I shot my documentary with Steven Seagal on pedophilia as the Achilles heel of the deep state. And Trump knows that. They're in a panic. Jeff Sessions has arrested 3,000 low-level people, and they're working their way up. And as soon as we get William Binney into the NSA databases, the rest of them are toast. Because we have every phone call and every email sent by every elite pedophile in America for the last 15 years, as well as every traitor, 500 of them across the U.S. government. It just hasn't been processed. NSA only processes 1% of what it collects. And NSA does not provide support to the CIA or the FBI. The secret intelligence world is a bunch of stovepipes. And then the secret services run the media narrative, okay? So basically Crap News Network and Fox News, 3 idiots in the morning, 5 at night, and the New York Times, the Washington Post, this is all crap, okay? Massimo Calabrese used to be a friend of mine 20 years ago, and then he lost his integrity when he became the Time bureau chief in Washington. His cover story on the Russians hacking the election could have been written by someone on the covert action staff at CIA. It was John Brennan's narrative. I will say clearly, John Brennan is a whore for Saudi Arabia. John Brennan has sold his country out. The Russians did not hack the election. Hillary Clinton stole 13 primaries from Bernie Sanders using electronic voting machine tampering, and Stanford University has documented that in a white paper. Okay, Hillary Clinton's the only one who tried to hack the election. We now know that Seth Rich was the primary leaker for the DNC. We now know that Podesta was done in by a Romanian taxi driver, Guccifer, using antiquated equipment. We now know that the last bit that flipped the election was not only stopping the theft of the same 13 states from Donald Trump, but her spaz attack in New York, and the New York Police Department leaking some final emails which demonstrated conclusively that Hillary Clinton is a traitor and probably a pedophile and absolutely a high-level thief. The Wiener laptop had 650,000 emails. That may be exaggerated. Let's call it 65,000, but 650,000 is what's said. They documented conclusively, A, that she had sent classified information to IP addresses in Saudi Arabia and Qatar. And by the way, we're throwing Qatar under the bus. The real criminals in the Middle East are Saudi Arabia and Israel, and Zionist Israel, not the loyal Jews in Israel and in the United States.
Why did Trump just give them $110 billion?
I don't know, but hold the questions to the end, okay? Because I do want to answer every question you have. My record is 8 hours and 1 minute, set at Hackers on Planet Earth in 2010. But the emails documented pay to play. She sold Libya to the French. She sold Syria and Yemen to the Saudis. She sold U.S. uranium to the Russians, all for massive amounts of money. In fact, she also sold the NATO Secretary Generalship to the Norwegian Prime Minister, who the Norwegians are now very ashamed of. Okay, so the Clinton Foundation is perhaps the world's biggest charity fraud outside of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which is sterilizing women worldwide with fraudulent vaccines. Okay, so that's the deep state. I have to say that the academicians have also lost their integrity. We no longer do critical thinking in this country, and we in fact have downgraded all of our universities with adjunct faculty that work for $5,000 a year for a course, and they don't have benefits. The religions and the labor unions have also sold us out, and they've basically accepted all of this as the way of doing business. I sat in a room with 40 other CEOs from nonprofits, and halfway through the meeting I realized they all understood the two-party system. They all understood how to get money from both the party in power and the party out of power, and they were terrified of the idea that Congress might actually stop giving nonprofits taxpayer money. Okay? So the whole system is, as Donald Trump has famously said, rigged. Now, why should we take down the deep state? Because until we take down the deep state, we will be slaves. We will be the oppressed. And those of you that came in late, I said earlier, we're all black now. Everything that's been done to the black people for 200 years is being done to the white people now. And for the first time, I think, a lot of angry white people are starting to get that. And that's a good thing. That brings us together. And it's long overdue. So how do you take down the deep state? Well, first off, Trump has been very, very slow to realize that he is an accidental fringe president. And Obama was a fringe president, elected by 26% of the eligible voters. Trump is elected by 27% of the eligible voters, but Trump was not the deep state's candidate. At noon on election day, Cambridge Analytica told him he had a 20% chance of winning. The British bookmakers, who never lose money, gave him 20-to-1 odds on best and 200-to-1 odds at worst. I went to bed in tears at 10 o'clock at night. My wife, who does not like Trump, woke me up at midnight and said, "You may want to watch this." And I got up and I had tears in my eyes from 10 at night until from midnight until 3 in the morning, okay? Now, if any of you doubt the existence of God, or if any of you doubt that God has a sense of humor, Donald Trump is his answer, okay? The most cheeky asshole from New York is President of the United States of America. It doesn't get any better. The problem is that Trump may have been bribed and may have been blackmailed to embrace the deep state agenda. I don't know yet. part of the Saudi Arabia thing, part of sucking up to Israel, may be a no mask. He may be playing them all for fools while he creates his pedophile and traitor counterintelligence surge, and then he will smash them all in one. This isn't a Saturday night massacre. This is the month of June massacre. I am told that Reince Priebus is being fired. He's being sent to Greece as ambassador where he can play with little boys to his heart's delight. Mike Pence may resign. I hope he does. I have nominated Cynthia McKinney as Vice President of the United States. And if Trump has a brain, and I think he does, Cynthia McKinney as Vice President with Donald Trump changes everything if he then executes the other ideas that I'm giving him. The Federal Reserve has to go. There's just no question about it. Until the Federal Reserve is nationalized, they own the United States and the United States government. They own the U.S. government, the U.S. economy, and U.S. society. Now, it is possible to nationalize the Federal Reserve in 1 week by cutting off their telecommunications, arresting the 12 heads of the Federal Reserve for a period of very, very benign but persistent interrogation, declaring a 1-week stock holiday and banking holiday, and having a contingency plan for essentially recovering all of the stuff that's been stolen from the public, from the banks, and possibly having a debt jubilee. Donald Trump has the power to cancel individual, family, and small business debt and give every single person a presidential pardon. I don't think he needs to use that power. Imagine if he had a Debt Be Gone website where 150 million Americans register and appoint Donald Trump as their personal agent for renegotiating their debt. I'm talking about $3 trillion here. If he were to be empowered to renegotiate just $1 trillion, and he were to cut off the Federal Reserve at the knees, all of a sudden Wall Street no longer has power over our lives. And this is a very, very real possibility. I know it scares people. They don't like to deal with things they don't understand. But I have talked this over with economists. I have done a one-pager for the president. I believe we can nationalize the Federal Reserve and in combination with these other ideas, take back the power. So what else do we need to do? I don't know if I mentioned this during my formal speech, so let me just say this. NSA has every email and every cell call from every elite pedophile and every traitor working for a foreign power or a domestic power like Goldman Sachs in its databases. But they only process 1% of what they collect. And that's the 1% that they want to use to blackmail members of Congress. NSA, CIA, and FBI are in the business of blackmailing members of Congress and judges in order to protect their budgets. Okay? And we need to put a stop to that. But in the meantime, as long as we have all this wonderful data lying fallow, we should appoint William Binney, my friend, my counterpart. I'm CIA, he's NSA. We should appoint William Binney and a special task force of U.S. Marshals to go into the NSA databases and create the map of the elite pedophiles and the high-level banker thieves and the traitors across the U.S. government, many of whom hold dual passports with either Israel or Saudi Arabia. Okay? It's all there. We can get it. But the president has to want to get it. And that's the hard part. Now, I've written a peace by design. Let me not forget that. The reason we have 1,000 military bases all over the world is not to project military power. It's to provide CIA with a lily pad through which it can smuggle guns, gold, drugs, cash, and small children for the elite. Closing these 1,000 military bases around the world will instantly earn Donald Trump a Nobel Peace Prize and will instantly shut that door on massive legalized smuggling by the CIA for the elite. Okay? I mean, the major drug runners in the United States of America are the FBI, the CIA, and the DEA. All right? I mean, this whole thing with crack cocaine. I was in a movie, The Last White Hope, The American War on Drugs. Ricky Ross is a black entrepreneur who brilliantly executed a campaign to create $5 cocaine. All of that cocaine was provided by CIA agent Blandon, a Nicaraguan Contra, who constantly kept getting out of jail because CIA covers up all of this stuff. And by the way, mind control is very real. Almost all of these false flag attacks are either patsies or mind control people. And when they make a mistake and don't kill the patsy, as happened in Fort Lauderdale, FBI covers it up. The guy in Fort Lauderdale walked into the FBI a week before the shooting and said, CIA is trying to train me to kill people. And the FBI threw him out. And then when he did kill people in Fort Lauderdale, whoever was supposed to shoot him on the spot either was late or didn't show up or whatever. And so the guy's alive. FBI is not interrogating him. FBI is not debriefing him to pin it back on CIA. They should be. So we need to get out of the UN. I would expel the UN. I've got better uses for that real estate. I would get out of NATO. Trump's instincts during the campaign were absolutely correct. NATO is a pimp for the horrors of war. Martin Luther King was assassinated not because he was leading black people for civil rights, but because he was saying that America was the greatest purveyor of violence on the earth. And the military-industrial complex put a contract out on it. Okay? John F. Kennedy managed to create the perfect storm. And what a lot of people don't realize is that George Bush Sr. was an active participant in the assassination of John F. Kennedy, as was Howard Hunt, George Bush's longtime aide. Yitzhak Rabin was the Israeli participant in the cabal and was present in Dallas to observe the assassination with his own eyes. Remember that, and remember the USS Liberty, and remember that shiksas don't count. Do you all know that phrase, shiksas don't count? I went to school with a Jewish Orthodox guy in Muhlenberg, and he was a very good tennis player. He was nailing a different Gentile girl every night. And I said, how do you reconcile being an Orthodox Jew and nailing a different Gentile girl every night? And he said, oh, shiksas don't count. That's all you need to know about how Israel views the United States of America. We are all shiksas and we don't count. The USS Liberty was mass murder, as is 9/11, which was run by Dick Cheney, and we can get into that in the Q&A period. So we really need to get our integrity back, and we need to get a grip on the truth. And I'm so pleased that some of you are interested in this. And finally, I think Donald Trump can lead a new economic paradigm. His health plan and his tax plan are both frauds. No health plan that does not have a price list and the power to negotiate is real. And no tax plan that does not tax Wall Street is real. So right there, he's got 2 for 2 zeros. He also has bad advisors. 1950s, 1970s advisors. This beautiful idea he has about creating a new infrastructure, investing infrastructure and all that, it's retarded. Because it is assuming industrial era processes, methods, and materials. You can actually completely restore the U.S. infrastructure and create a whole bunch of small cities connected by high-speed rail and do a whole bunch of other things, sustainable cities, for 10% of what people are telling him he's going to need. And if you have an automated payment transaction tax that takes a tiny fractional tax off every transaction at the same time that we close down the IRS and stop taking income tax from people, federal government should not be allowed to tax state citizens. You have all the money you need. So his new economic paradigm needs to focus on open source everything engineering, which costs 10% of what Western engineering costs. And you'll remember my John Deere example. Okay, so what have I done with Donald Trump? I did a memorandum for the president warning him of the 4-track strategy to destroy him and warning him that a violent American spring was coming. And I did it again as Memorandum for the President 2.0, and then Cynthia McKinney did it as Memorandum for the President 3.0. And if you just look up Memorandum for the President 3.0, you'll get right to it. 4 million people have read this memorandum, including the President of the United States. But everyone around him is telling him that I will be bad for him. And you can decide for yourselves if I'm bad for Donald Trump and bad for America, or if maybe his advisors are traitors and mediocrities who should all be fired. I tried to give Trump 8 specific ideas. And I've been trying to do this since December 2015. Since July 2015. I wrote the first article in Counterpunch, How Donald Trump Can Win, Countercoup. And then I went on to do the Trump Revolution series at Amazon, and these letters, and of course the alt-right videos. Herbert McMaster is a traitor. He was a never-Trumper. Trump doesn't vet his people properly. Reince Priebus is basically telling Trump to hire people that Priebus knows are traitors, okay? Herbert McMaster conspired, and I have this from a source in the White House. Herbert McMaster conspired with John McCain, who was being blackmailed by CIA, and who lost his honor in prison camp. His nickname there was Songbird. And John Brennan, who is still in effective charge of the CIA, just as Allen Dulles was when he retired or was forced out of the CIA. And if you read the Devil's Chess book, that's the playbook that Dulles used against Kennedy, and it's the playbook that Brennan is using against Trump today. Rebus is a traitor who does not want to unrig the system. He put in charge of the Office of Presidential Personnel a guy who we call Boner's Revenge, who has been planting establishment people all across the government, okay, including Ashkenazi Jews, 55 of them. And so Donald Trump has no idea how many people are across the government that are in active betrayal of his and our interests, okay? I think Mike Pence has to go. Mike Pence works for Dick Cheney and George Bush. Mike Pence is a Bushy. And he cannot be trusted to be loyal to the president. So I think he needs to be forced to resign if Trump actually wants to get his house in order. He needs to retake the Office of Presidential Personnel. And he needs to have a presidential academy. Right now, he has no discipline across his government. Tillerson, Mattis, everybody is contradicting the president when they're speaking overseas. And part of the problem is Donald Trump has no grand strategy. He doesn't understand that there are 10 high-level threats to humanity and 12 core policies that need to be addressed all at once. And because I'm the only guy in the United States of America can do this, I will list them alphabetically for you. The 10 high-level threats to humanity that were identified by General Scowcroft and the high-level threat panel are poverty, infectious disease, environmental degradation, interstate conflict, civil war, genocide, other atrocities, proliferation, terrorism, and transnational crime. Our national security state only plays with interstate conflict and terrorism. And the terrorism is of our own making. We create terrorism as a means of reinforcing the budget of the national security state. The 12 core policies that have been in every mandate for change book by every president going back 25 years are agriculture, diplomacy, economy, education, energy, family, health, immigration, justice, security, society, and water. I tried to work through Priebus before I realized he was a traitor in December of 2016 to get Trump to do a grand strategy summit before Inauguration Day so that on Inauguration Day he could announce a coherent vision for the future. Now, he did a pretty good job with his inauguration speech, but there was no meat. It was all words. There was nothing there that was actionable, such as an election reform act. If he had started that Inauguration Day speech by saying, I realize I am a fractional president, the system is rigged, together we're going to unrig it, I am today introducing the Electoral Reform Act of 2017, he would have won the hearts and minds of 2/3 of the country on that one day. But he didn't do that. He didn't know how to do that because Priebus kept from him my 10-page memo, which was then published at Zero Hedge and The Mind Unleashed and got 400,000 views in about 4 weeks. So I still have hope for Donald Trump, but Cynthia and I have agreed we're moving forward with or without Donald Trump. He needs to create the Trump channel. Brad Parscale, I don't know if all of you know this, but Brad Parscale is the guy that created the Trump digital space during the campaign. He did not do as much as people give him credit for. A lot of the money that went into that was probably stolen and fed back to the Trump family to replace funds that Trump had donated before. Parscale has reached the limits of his Peter Principle incompetence. The Trump website today is crap. It isn't a two-way street. It doesn't teach you anything. It has no holistic analytic framework. Trump needs to have something like pollmole.vote, which, disclosure, I'm receiving a stipend from that guy, but I believe in the company. Trump should be able to do a trumpet that bypasses Twitter completely. You all know Google Gestapo. Twitter is repressing pro-Trump commentary and elevating resistance, not our president impeach Donald Trump commentary. So Eric Schmidt is manipulating what everybody is seeing in social media today for and against Trump. But if he were to do a trumpet and have 150 million citizens registered on pollmole.vote, then he could get back a presidential dashboard that shows how every citizen feels divided by congressional district, demographic, age, income, whatever. Okay? He could actually have a two-way communication channel with the entire American public, bypassing the fake news media and bypassing the two political parties that are killing this country with their corruption. I've told you about the Debt Be Gone website. That's simply a power play. But he also needs an open source agency, which would use the Trump channel to educate people. I came to the conclusion long ago that intelligence, which is actually decision support, it's not about spies and secrecy. Intelligence is remedial education for senior political leaders that don't read. Donald Trump does not read. He's a very verbal person. Okay, so you have to literally communicate with Donald Trump in 3-minute sound bites and index cards with 3 colors, red, yellow, and green. Okay, I know how to do that. But it's a challenge. He has the power to close the National Security Agency overnight. The National Security Agency, which has been doing mass surveillance on all of you, as well as surveilling and blackmailing our politicians, has no legislative charter. William Binney and I have agreed that 70% of the National Security Agency can be thrown away. But we need to move the data that is needed to capture the pedophiles and traitors, and we need to move the 30% that's worth saving into a new directorate at CIA. CIA needs to be cut in half and then built back up. We can close the National Reconnaissance Office, the National Security Agency, and the National Geospatial Agency, and make those, the 30% of each that we save, directorates in a new revitalized CIA, classified intelligence agency, which is balanced by an open source agency that provides decision support for 90 to 95% of what we need. Now, let me give you a very specific example of the worthlessness of the secret intelligence community. General Tony Zinni is on record when he was commanding general of the U.S. Central Command, fighting 2 wars with 12 joint task forces across Africa and elsewhere. He said he got, at best, 4% of what he needed from a $70 billion a year secret intelligence community. 4%, $70 billion. When I created with Ben Harrison the open source branch at the U.S. Special Operations Command, within 1 year, Ben Harrison was documenting that he was answering 40% of all special operations requirements for intelligence worldwide, including Russian military maps for denied area border crossings, which the NGA couldn't handle, for $5 million. 40% for one community, $5 million. 4%, $70 billion. That is how messed up our government is, financially speaking. Basically, we're spending taxpayer money because we can. It's not producing anything of value other than corruption for the 1%. Health reform, he needs to get Carl Denninger in. Carl Denninger is my friend. He's a co-founder of the Tea Party. He wrote an excellent book called Leverage, and he's written a health reform plan. People don't realize there are no price lists in America for any surgical procedure or any prescription. It's a complete crapshoot what you pay. It depends on who you are, where you are, what your insurance plan is, what deal they've cut with the county, the state, the hospital. Okay? And Congress, which has been bribed, refuses to allow the U.S. government to negotiate with the pharmaceutical industry. And by the way, the food industry and the pharmaceutical industry have 3 goals in life: to make all of us fat and give us diseases, to sell us stuff that doesn't work to cure those diseases, and to make a big profit while doing so. Okay? The Food and Drug Administration and the Center for Disease Control are criminal networks. They should be under indictment because their job in life is to approve the poisoning and lethal injection of American citizens. This is just so totally wrong. On the tax thing, Edgar Feige has created the automated payment transaction tax. Right now, the tax is built on the backs of the middle class and the master class, the blue-collar master class. And the federal tax base is basically like this on a pyramid. We can eliminate the IRS and eliminate all taxes and substitute only an automated payment transaction tax, which applies to all currency and stock transactions on Wall Street, all internal corporate transactions in goods and services, and all normal transactions, including cash withdrawals and deposits from banks. That increases significantly the amount of money that's available, and it eliminates the burden on everybody. And last but not least, we have to decide. Do we want an honest government? Do we want to take down the deep state? Or do we want to let Donald Trump self-destruct? Because that's where he's headed. He's not going to finish out his term on his present path. And if he self-destructs, then Mike Pence becomes the stand-in for the deep state, and Congress continues to be a two-party tyranny. Now, let me end this section by saying that pedophilia is going to take down at least 4 senior Republican senators and 2 Republican governors sometime in the next 18 months. Think Denny Hassert on steroids. Think John and Tony Podesta and Hillary and Bill Clinton on steroids. The Republicans are vastly more into pedophilia and child murder and blood drinking than the Democrats are. And this is going to happen. And when this happens, Donald Trump is going to be left playing with himself, because there will be no Republican Party in control of the House or the Senate. If we lose just 4 senators to suicide, resignation, or jail, the Democrats will take the Senate. And the House will impeach him and the Senate will convict him. He needs an election reform act in order to survive the pedophilia scandal that is going to take down the Republican Party, in my humble opinion. I used to be a Reagan Republican, and now I'm a Libertarian, but I think the Libertarian Party leadership is a bunch of idiots. They don't want to win. They just want to appoint a drug-addicted white man with another white man. I mean, what kind of party puts up 2 old white guys as their ticket? How stupid do you have to be? I tried to get them to run a Libertarian Green joint ticket. They might even have won had they done it right. And I tried to get them to appoint a coalition cabinet and produce a balanced budget in advance of Election Day. Because the day of electing a single president as a decider and picker of a cabinet is over. If Cynthia McKinney and I run for office in 2020, we will announce our cabinet in advance. We will challenge the other parties to cabinet-level debates. So agriculture on agriculture, attorney general on attorney general. We will publish a balanced budget. It will be easier with an election reform act. But even without an election reform act, I'm pretty sure that Cynthia McKinney and I can embarrass any possible competition in 2020. They simply are not going to pass the authenticity test. Now, I don't actually want to run for president. I want to run the open source agency. That's what I've trained my whole life for. I want to make sure that the American people and the American president, the American cabinet are the best informed people on the planet. So let me end now by talking about the 12-point Election Reform Act. I got started in this when Occupy was formed. I'm a son of New York. And I drove up to New York and they gave me a hearing in front of the Occupy Election Reform Working Group. And a guy named Philip Small videotaped my 6-minute briefing and it went viral. In fact, one of my kids said, "Dad, you're on the front page of Reddit." And I did a Gary Johnson. I said, "What's a Reddit?" And so I learned about Reddit from my son. But I was briefing Occupy on the fact that election reform is central. No other issue, guns, gays, debt, health, nothing is going to get an honest hearing in Washington unless we get election reform first. Election reform is root. Without election reform, putting the 99% back in charge and holding Congress accountable to its constituents, nothing good is going to happen in the next 4 years, even if Donald Trump were the Messiah, which I'm pretty sure he's not. He's still thinking about it. But the bottom line here is Donald Trump is an opportunity. The deep state is our common enemy, and if the deep state is our common enemy and the enemy of our enemy is our friend, then Donald Trump has enormous potential for both the alt-left and the alt-right. And it was Cynthia's genius that realized that black churches across America, and I'm also reaching out to Lewis, the Nation of Islam, if the black churches across this country host open houses and seek to bring alt-right and alt-left and small parties and independents together, we can have a national conversation. I will just tell you, I'm reaching out to people who can supply me with small piles of shit, by which I mean sawdust with fiberglass that's crafted into a really nice doggy doo pile. And then we'll have them tailored with little flags that have the name of the member. And then groups will go to each member's front lawn in a candlelight ceremony and ask them to sign the integrity pledge. And if they refuse to sign the integrity pledge, we will very, very elegantly place these little piles of shit with candles on their front lawn and televise this across YouTube. I'm pretty sure they're going to notice. Okay? So I do have a plan. So I am more of an aggregator of good ideas from people. I connect dots. So most of these ideas, with the exception of the coalition cabinet announced in advance and coalition cabinet debates, are from other people. I've spent years studying all of the election reform proposals, and I will tell you right now, Lawrence Lessig is a traitor. He tried to flip the Electoral College while hiding out in Iceland. Okay? I mean, Lessig has never been willing to go beyond campaign finance reform. He's not as big and broad a thinker as he thinks he is. And I love Christina Tobin from Free and Equal, but Christina Tobin has never been able to get past ballot access. There are, in fact, 12 separate, distinct things that have to be done together in order to create an honest Congress. The first one is universal registration, and prisoners keep the vote. One of the things Cynthia tells me is that a lot of black people are ready to move away from the Democratic Party because they now realize that Bill and Hillary Clinton have put more black people in jail than there were slaves at the beginning of the Civil War. The Clinton crime bill has been used to clean out black neighborhoods. Red line districts. New York City is spending $75 million a year putting black people in jail for recreational marijuana use. Okay, this is an outrage. So universal registration, and prisoners continue to vote, or at least most prisoners. And by the way, this is not a take it or leave it list. This is the beginning of a national conversation. So this is the best I've been able to do. Now everyone else has to take this and talk about it. Second is free and equal ballot access. That's Christina's one-trick pony. Obviously, anybody should be able to run for Congress and not have to get 300,000 signatures as opposed to 5,000 signatures. Richard Winger's a friend of mine. He's done a great thing with Ballot Access News. Tightly drawn districts, everyone knows about gerrymandering, but what you may not know, which I only learned myself a month ago, is that districts are drawn based on all adults across the country, including illegal aliens and foreigners. So we would have tightly, and by the way, California would lose 4 congressmen if we didn't count illegal aliens and foreigners in California, significantly reducing California's clout. So tightly drawn districts, and the districts are based only on U.S. citizen eligible voters. And you have free and equal public funding, so you eliminate the funding aspect of corporations and Citizens United. You have free and equal media access. Every media outlet has some form of public charter. We can force the crap news network to provide equal time to each of the candidates in a race as we move forward. And of course, we have to eliminate Google Gestapo. I believe that Jeff Sessions should be opening a racketeering investigation into Google, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and their other surrogates. Inclusive debates. The League of Women Voters lost their integrity. They let the two-party tyranny steal the debates from them. They were doing a good job. They were including third, fourth, and fifth party candidates, and they were not providing the questions in advance. Had I been president of the League of Women Voters, I would have said, hey, there will be no sex in America until we get the debates back, and made it stick. Okay? The League of Women Voters was not willing to go to the mattress, if you take my meaning. And I am ashamed of them to this day. I want the League of Women Voters to be back in charge of the debates. Okay? And of course, cabinet level debates and a balanced budget published in advance of Election Day. The public has a right to know what it's buying into. Not just one man or woman, but a team, a mindset, a philosophy, and a commitment to integrity. Open primaries. Election Day holiday and free public transport. The reason half our eligible voters don't vote is because we make it impossible for them to vote. They can't get to vote and do work and so forth. So we make it easy to vote. Big one. Paper ballots counted publicly on site. Every single electronic voting machine has been designed for fraud. Okay, it's called fractional voting. There are a number of books on this. It is indisputable that all electronic voting machines are fraudulent. Paper ballots counted publicly on site, plus exit polls, which Poll Mole can do, plus exit polls, keeps our elections honest. Instant runoff. End the winner-take-all system. The system is rigged now so that you'll have 4 or 5 candidates split the vote, and then the pre-designated winner, it gets like a fractional vote, but just enough to eke out a win. If you have people vote like first, second, and third choices, then you have an instant runoff, and you actually end up with a candidate that represents the majority vote. Okay? Legislative process integrity. No secret legislation. All legislation posted online in advance with tracked changes, knowing who is changing everything. And the constituents instruct their representatives. Today, members of Congress don't give a flying crap what their constituents think, because they know they can get away with murder until it's time for another election, and then they'll go in and bombard them with propaganda and eke out another win. And last but not least, and I credit Ellen Brown with this, I love her public banking concept, and I'm friends with Del Spurlock, a man of color who was President Reagan's Deputy Secretary of Labor. We have breakfast every once in a while. He's pointed out to me that Taft-Hartley 14B destroyed unions in the United States of America. We have made it impossible for unions to succeed, and we cannot have a democracy unless we have economic and financial democracy in America. So on the one hand, we repeal Taft-Hartley 14B and make it really, really popular to be a member of a union or a professional association. And second, we nationalize the Federal Reserve. We cannot be a democracy as long as the Rothschilds and the Vatican own the U.S. financial system. So that's it. Those are the 12 ideas. And if you just go to #unrigged, #unrigged, you'll get right to the manifesto that I published with a foreword from Cynthia McKinney. It's also at Kindle, but it's free online. And my vision now, which I have absolutely no influence, power, or money with which to push it, is that we have a conversation across America in June, and we occupy the front lawns and home offices of every member of Congress in July. July is the one time of year when they cannot hide from their constituents. They're home. Okay? And I may make $1 per pile of shit. I don't know. But I think this is a really good idea. I think maybe we can even get deluxe shit that has an odor. There's a lot of really good, innovative stuff we can do here. But the bottom line here is I want every member of Congress shitting in their pants this summer for fear that the American public is coming to see them. And the fastest, easiest way for them to avoid that is to sign the Integrity Pledge. And in September, we have a 1 million-person, all-color March on Washington. We honor Martin Luther King and John F. Kennedy and Donald Trump and Cynthia McKinney and Patrick Buchanan and Virgil Goode and Ralph Nader and Ross Perot and everybody who has ever tried to stand for integrity, including Ron Paul and Dennis Kucinich. And we sit on the steps of Capitol Hill until the Election Reform Act of 2017 is passed. I believe it's possible, but only you can make it happen. Thank you.